Hello and welcome to an unboxing of a game that I've been working on for 3 to 4 years. I think it's been going on 4 years now. It's gone through several iterations. Finally went all in and put a series of promo games together. I think there's 7 out in the wild right now, with 1 or 2 that are floating around in my basement space here that are ready to be put together. We are going on version 2 of the entire game, and we are just getting ready to put together an order for version 2. I thought I would finally show what it is that I have been working on for quite some time. I understand that this is Succession Wars is part of the Battletech series, or Battletech lore, if you will. And I don't own that IP, and I could not publish this on my own. Although I love Battletech, I've been playing it since the early 80s when I first discovered it with my friends, and would love for this to stay under the Battletech idea. But we'll see. Right now it's still, let's plan, let's play, let's see if it's even worth moving forward. I have played more games of this than I can possibly count. I have passed this on to some friends that I trust, and I have received some feedback from a few of them and have incorporated their ideas, and I thought I would show you a little bit of what I guess version 1 would be with a little bit of version 2 mixed in. So first of all, this is the box, and you can tell if you are a Battletech person, that picture probably looks somewhat familiar, and this is sort of a controversial issue that's going around on Kickstarter and really just on the internet, and that is the possibility of using AI artwork. And while I haven't used anything that is AI created, I have generously borrowed from the internet community, whether it is from DeviantArt or just general pictures Googled online through images. I have made changes to most, but not all, of the artwork that I have created, so I do have my hand in almost all of it. All the design work in this is from me. I wrote all the story behind it, and so 95% of this is coming from me, but the artwork, if you see some pictures in here and you're like, I know that picture, well, yeah, you do. And of course, if this was going to go into publishing, art would have to be commissioned, and things would have to be changed around, unless it was just simply sold off to a bigger company. But here we go. So you probably do recognize this a little bit. The actual name of this would be Succession Wars, and then A Battle for Survival on the Moon of Clathandu. And it's a solo game solo only at this point, although I have been working on a head-to-head version of it. But it's a solo game, and it is based on one of the moons that is in Davian space. But it's Kurita versus Davian for the most part. And this is the box itself. Flipping it over, hopefully I don't crash everything on the inside. Oh, I guess it's a little bit turned around. But the back of the box, if you want to get a decent look at that, that would be the back of the box right there. And this is kind of what I was going with. I can tell you version 2, we are ordering new box types, and this is changed out. I'm no longer using that picture. In fact, it's a manipulated picture of something else that I found that I thought was really cool. And I believe that might have actually been AI created. I'm not entirely sure. So let me stop this for a moment, and we will come back as I open up the box top. Okay, it took just a little bit to get this open, so it's flesh. It's actually kind of cool. This is a linen top, one of the little, I guess, extras that I decided to go through when I created the copy. Pretty happy with the way that turned out. It did look a little bit brighter when I had it in design. Print came out a little darker than I would hope, but still, you get the idea. All right, the contents of the game, and this is everything that would come with the game if it were to be sold. There are 3 books in here. The first one of those books is the rules of the game, and I'll go through this stuff individually in a little bit, but I thought I'd give an overview here first. The rules of the game first, and each of these is a 24-page booklet, and we'll kind of thumb through all this stuff in a little bit here. But the rules first. The scenarios book. So this is kind of a choose-your-own-adventure / war game. I shouldn't say war game, I should say tabletop game, but a choose-your-own-adventure, and then you get to a battle and you fight that battle out on the mat. But you are going to kind of guide your way through. It does branch into several different directions, so it's not completely linear. It is very possible that you go through the entire game and you don't play every scenario. And then this is the entries book, and this is the story itself. There are 20 some page, 24 pages, and there are a lot of different entries. I think there's nearly 80 entries in there, which are supported by entries in the bottoms of each of these scenarios as well. So there's a win-loss scenario for each one, and things can change a little bit depending upon how it is that you play it out. This is the depot. This is where you will put your enemy mechs. They are stacked in order from easy to difficult, and generally by tonnage as well. I think that there are going to be some purists who are just a little bit unhappy because when I call something an atlas, or I call something a hunchback, I'm generally calling it by its original name and not hunchback 2C or whatever that may be. There are a couple of them in there that I specifically loaded out so that they would be that mech, and I have labeled those. But for the most part, a rifleman's a rifleman. Over on the side over here, some famous artwork in the back, but over on the side over here, there's some objective areas that you can fill in as you go. You get points for objectives. And overall, when you are playing the game, when you're finished, it's about completing the story. But there is not a win-loss so much as there is the ability to do better, a points or a victory point system, if you will. So that's where you'll stack your mechs. Probably one of the more important pieces here, and that is the playing surface itself. I decided to go with a mat instead of a board. One, so that it would completely, and it's a little curled over here, but it's been sitting in that box for years. But I went with the mat instead of a board so you could fit it inside the box, and you can see everything fits inside the box nicely. Created an insert for everybody that got a promo copy. They got the same insert, and that would be probably close to the way I would want that boxed anyway, so everything fits in. There's a lot of little components in there. And then this is the mat itself. There is a round tracker over here. Generally speaking, things end after 28 rounds. There's an area on each side where you would keep cubes that are resource cubes that you would use throughout the battles for both piloting and gunnery. This is the battlefield itself. Here's where your mech row would lie. Your center torso would go here, and then you have two sides to your mech, or right and left side, and then any upgrades that you would make eventually to your mech would go in here. And then this little space down here is for red upgrades, and they're off to the side because they aren't treated the same as the rest of your mech. Over on the side over here you have a pilot, which we'll see here in a few minutes, and your pilot has a rating which can be upgraded through these little spots right here. There are reinforcements that will come into battle as you play round by round, because you have some rounds where nothing happens. You have rounds where you will collect resources. You have rounds where you will choose Tides of War cards, which I'll show you here in a minute. And then you have rounds where you would add reinforcements. And these are all changeable with tokens, just laid over top. And then these rounds will all be different as different scenarios play out. So these would be the reinforcements that you would pop in, and there's, I think at the time, 40 different cards for reinforcements, so there's a lot of variability that goes on. No two games should be the same. Up top are Tides of War cards, and those are things that can change the events of the game. And those, I think, are about 2-to-1 ratio, good to bad. So when you choose them, sometimes you get what you want, and sometimes the enemy gets what they want. All right, so that's the mat. And we'll move on and check out a few of the other things here. There are cards that you're going to be using, and I'll pull all of those out at this time. We will start with the middle section right in here. These are your pilot cards, and some of the other cards are mixed in with it as well. I like the idea of keeping them inside of these little cases. They don't fall all over the place, and they're kept neatly inside of here. So you've got your mech pilots. And this game would come with 8. I actually designed about 30 of these, and then I redesigned them, and then when I redesigned them I just kept it down to 8, and I changed the stats a little bit so that these stats are now all the same on the right hand side for each starting pilot. And then over on the side, obviously the name on the bottom, but over on the side would be the stats. These are different for each pilot, so you could go through those and choose which one you wanted to excel at. but you have your mental fortitude up top, you have your melee ability in the middle, if you have to go hand to hand and fight anybody, and you have a repair skill on the bottom, and those will change for each of the pilots. Of course, there's the picture of the pilot in the middle. These are pictures of my friends, and that have been manipulated in one way or another. Moving on, another pilot, and you can see that the stats are a little bit different for this pilot, but they all equal 7, so nobody is stronger or weaker than another. There is another few of those. Let's just zip through those because you don't need to see every single pilot. Moving on, we have your mech cards, and this is the current generation of the mech cards. I have some older ones. The older generation looked more like this. You can see side-by-side comparison. I just made a few cosmetic changes, and then it's nothing drastic, but I just liked the look, and I was trying to drop this. And then you can see this is the, get out of the glare here, the starting, come on, get in there. Get back just a little bit. The starting center torso card. It's a no-cost card, and you start out with your no-cost cards. The picture in it is just the picture of your atlas. You start out in an atlas. It is House Davian, which again could be switched out. And then there are hit points over on the top right-hand side, the number of points that your center torso can take before it's destroyed. And then, of course, this is a dice chucker, if you will. So you're going to be rolling dice for your center torso. And there are multiple cards. This would be an upgraded center torso. You can see that it costs 1 gold cube to upgrade to this card. I don't plan to go through all the rules in this video. This is really more of an unboxing, but you can kind of see how that works. Another one, another upgrade, and then you've got your sides. And the sides, as these were blue around the outside, these are yellow around the outside, and they correspond to the spots. This is the blue spot, just tinted a little bit because of the matte. And then this is the yellow, and then this is your green upgrades, and then your red upgrades at the bottom. So this would be one of your yellow sides. This would be a no-cost side that you would start with first. You would equip this on your very first scenario. And then you can see some of the things that you can do. And I kept some of the language the same, LRMs, SRMs, PPCs, and so on. There's a variety, depends upon what you have. An upgraded side, just an idea what you can do with your upgrades, and your upgrades are just more powerful in the bottom, sometimes a little bit more as far as you can see. The dice allocation is a little bit different. Here is the no-cost side for the other side of it. And then just kind of moving on, we will zip through this a little bit. And then here's one of the green upgrades, and you don't start with these must be purchased after scenarios. And you can see this is one of the bigger upgrades, as it costs 4 of the gold cubes to get, and it's a Gauss rifle. And there is its stats down below, and then of course a picture of what it is, and then that would be upgraded. You would place that in an upgrade side, and then as it takes damage it would eventually get destroyed and flipped over and left right there. Another one of the upgrades, I'll just show you one more of them, and that is there's some mercenaries that you can buy to help you out as well, and they would of course be placed in one of those little spots right there in the upgrades. So that would be all the upgrades, and there are 30 of these cards that you can play through on your different scenarios with the mech. So you've got your pilot cards, and you've got your mech cards, and then you have your reinforcement cards, and these are the cards that would go in this spot right here, flipped upside down. But when you are told to pick one of these, you would pick it up and resolve the card. If we were playing an early scenario, for example, place a green enemy from the supply into the first open space, and then there are rules to how enemies are placed up in here. And then you would go on and on as you go through here. So that would be an example, but there are a lot of different cards, and they are depicted somewhat graphically. Alright, so when you get these cards, there are a couple of different things that go with them. Obviously there's some artwork, and this is where the vast majority of the art that was borrowed, if you will, from online. I didn't want playing cards, so I got placeholder artwork for most of these things. And the rest of this is my design. A bit of luck, hold and resolve at the start of your next round, draw a free Tides of War card, and then this card replaces this card. So, you know, you never know what you're going to get. These cards are You can have up to 4 in your hand, and sometimes more, depending upon what kind of upgrades you have. And these are just kind of kept off to the side, and when you're ready to use those, sometimes they tell you to, there's rules on how to resolve them. Hold and resolve at the start of the next round. Some of these cards you can hold on to until you're ready to use them, and then some of them you must resolve immediately. And those are the Tides of War cards. What else do we have in here? We have, like all good games that have a story to them, we have some hidden stuff in here, and there's a series of, most of them are upside down, a series of 8 envelopes that you'll go through. So you really don't even know what you have to do other than finish the story to earn a really high score in this game, and that is revealed in one of the envelopes. But these other ones will contain things that you can use and things that you must confront as you go through some of the stories, and there's 8 of them in this story. I can tell you that I have yet to open all 8 of them, as I have played through the scenario a few, I don't know, 5-6 times. I've never opened all 8. Tokens. There's a variety of tokens. These are round covering tokens, so as you go through this, see if I can open these up with one hand. These are tokens that are double-sided, and were used over top of some of these rounds. So if round 20 is going to be a Tides of War round, you just simply lay that over top of round 20, and then when you get down to that round and you hop on top of that with your marker, you know that that has to be a Tides of War card. And that can greatly change the difficulty of the battle. So if I want you to have to draw reinforcement cards a lot more, I can start covering up some of these rounds, and now all of a sudden, instead of resources, you are now drawing additional enemies on those rounds. Again, ramping up some of the difficulty. Some of the other markers, we have markers that are used for objectives. These are things that you will claim throughout the story as you are going through, and then they're generally placed on your objective markers up here, and sometimes they are cashed in for certain events. You can upgrade your pilot, so if I lay my pilot here, you can see that next to him are a few spaces, and as you go through the scenarios, your pilot is going to gain experience, and you'll be able to upgrade that pilot and eventually be able to get higher stats. This would be really important if you are trying to negate some of the enemy's firepower, or you want to up some of your firepower. It'll ask you, you can do so much damage, but if you have a higher gunnery, you can do even more damage, and that's what that is for. And then your pilot, and these go from 1 to 4. But your piloting upgrades, that's for initiative. You roll every round for initiative, and you'll use your piloting ability. So the higher that number is, the better off you're going to be. It's always, since we don't do simultaneous combat in this game, it is always to your advantage to be the one who fires first. So those are some of the tokens. We have... Now, most of the copies that I have out in the wild are using these guys, the plastic counters, or the plastic cubes, I should say, and these are used over here in your resource area. You build these cubes up, and then you'll spend them throughout the scenarios, depending upon what a card might ask for. For example, if you pay a red and a blue cube, you can do this on your Tides of War card, and you will build those up. You get those through your resource rounds and according to your pilot's ability. In my version, I just for some reason really like these weighty cubes. The metal feels different in your hand, and so I just went on to BGG, onto their page, and I bought these cubes for myself. There should be 25 of the red and blues, and I believe 30 of the golds. And then you've got dice. Alright, well, these are the dice that you're going to use to place on top of your mech. So you would take these white dice and you would place them on the mech, and that would determine your health as you go through the game. So if I was starting with this particular upgrade, I would go put this out on here like that. And then as I took damage, I would count these down. If I took 2 damage, I'm down to 1 health on that card on the outside, and you work from the outside in as far as damage goes, and if you ever lose your center torso, you're done. All right, but that's how those are used. if you'll notice, there are some Battletech, actual Battletech dice in here. It was much easier for me to use established Battletech dice, which I think are kind of cool anyway. But as you play the game, you are going to roll a die for your center torso. You're going to roll a die for each of your sides if you have them, and then if any upgrades you might have, you would roll a die for that. You would roll an initiative die, and this is the one that I use for my initiative, the black and red. It's unique. These dice, you actually track the health of these guys with these big dice as well. You roll a die, a purple die for each enemy, and then you roll your initiative die, and then, come on. So if I have 2 enemies on the board, I would roll a die for each enemy. I would roll a die for my center torso. I would roll 1 for my side, 1 for my upgrade, and 1 for my initiative. And then as you roll these things, you will place them out. If you have more than one side, in this case I only have 1, but if you had more than one side, you could decide where you wanted to put your dice on each side. Same thing with the upgrades. Do I want the 3 over here? Do I want the 3 over there? If I have 2, I can decide on that. Your center torso die is always your center torso die. And then these 2 dice would get allocated towards your enemies, and you would start with the high die in the bottom left row, and the 4 would go there, and then the next mech in would get the 1. And then this would be my initiative roll, and I have to, in order to win initiative, I need to roll below, so a 1 is good and a 6 is bad. In this case, my initiative, actually I'm going against my piloting, not my gunnery. My initiative is a 1, so when I begin, I need to hit a 1 in order to win initiative, and I rolled a 6, so a 6 is always a loss, even if your piloting was at a 6. So the enemies would all fire first, I would take all my damage, and then if I still have these guys left, so if this took 3 damage and got flipped over, this die is no longer any good, but get placed off to the side, and I would just return fire with what I have left over here. Next up, and you are starting out piloting an Atlas, and here's my Atlas miniature. I painted up one of these. This is not 28 millimeter. This would be closer to about 18, but it fits pretty well and is used solely as a round marker. So you would start him up here on round 1, and then as you would track the rounds and go down, he would simply move down. And he's just a round marker is really what all he is. Just kind of a little bonus. And then finally in the box we have a campaign save box, so you can play this through, and this is played as a campaign. There are 2 one-off scenarios you can play, but it's a whole lot more fun to read through the campaign and just kind of play out the story. And as you go through it, there's all the rest of my dice. Put them all in here for some reason. One other token that I didn't talk about, clue tokens. Actually, 2 other tokens I didn't talk about would be the clue tokens, and then there are some, it is possible to, that's backwards. It is possible to overheat. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but that's an overheating token, and as your mech overheats, these bars are placed over top of the mech, and now that little space is no longer usable. And there are also weapon on offline. As you know, Battletech, heat is a big deal, and if you run out of ammo, or if something that the enemy does sometimes can cause you to have a weapon offline, and those would be placed as well. All right, and that's how those things work. And then throughout the story, these are victory points. Essentially, you can earn clues. I got all of these from a person who makes them on Etsy. They actually did these specifically for me, which was really cool. She did a great job with this. In fact, I think I'm about ready for a reorder on those. And you can see the variety. Here's the red die that I had missed earlier. Seldom used, but it's there. Sometimes I use that if you roll an additional die for something, I'll use the red. But the campaign save box is just a regular box, and as you're done, the cool thing about this is if I decide to play 2, it takes about 30 minutes to do one scenario. And if I decide after 2 scenarios I'm done for the night, I can take all of the cards from the row, I can take the pilot, I can take any of my resources that I've earned, objectives, clues, and I could put all that stuff in this box and then seal this up. And the only thing I need to mark down on my own would be what scenario that I ended off in. I could just put a bookmark in the book itself, And when I come back, I know that when I start up, all my stuff is safely in here, packed away. All I have to do is in 2 minutes, get everything out, put it back on the rows, and get my marker back up there and read the next scenario, and I'm ready to go. There are 21 scenarios in total, so you're talking probably about, for one playthrough, somewhere in the area of actual playing time, I would say close to about 18 to 20 hours. And then, of course, you could replay this in any number of ways and get completely different results. The only thing that wouldn't necessarily change would be some of the entries in the book. But I've played it through 4 to 5 times now, all the way from start to finish, and not just one-off scenarios, which I've played dozens of times each. And it's slightly different for each time. In fact, there's been a couple of times where I didn't actually even make it to the end. All right, you can, as speaking of not making it to the end, I've kind of eliminated the idea of these being actual deaths, but instead being times when you would quote-unquote die, but the story can really, if you choose, not end, and you would just simply mark off on the back of the box times that you have either perished or come close to perishing. It'll tell you when to mark those off. Those would be negative victory points. And then you've got the objectives you've earned, clue tokens you've earned, and then any of the yellow/gold cubes that you would have accumulated at the end in your save box. And all of that stuff goes towards victory points. There's different points for each thing, and then there's a few other factors. That is everything. That is Succession Wars. I am putting in an order for some new components, including the box top. While these cards are all usable and new, there is a different look to the Tides of War cards. But there are a few extras that are put in there, and those extras, I want to play the game and film it with everything included, and this is like 97% of everything included. So, including all new books. These have all been completely revised and completely rewritten. I'm an English major, but I also have a friend who is an English major, and he went through, and he's probably played this the most after I have. And any entries that we have inside of here, things that I wrote, I can say while I can write, I am not the best typist in the world, and so occasionally my fingers will hit something twice. But you can see there's a lot of different paragraph entries, and while there's not that many of them, there's quite a bit of story for some of them. Some tests that you have to go through with your characters, and that's where your abilities come in over here. But he went through and helped me proofread this, and so I think that we have everything ironed out of this thing, and that would be the story. Scenarios, just a quick look at one of the scenarios if you're interested in that. I guess we'll look at scenario 1. It's more, I've taken the tutorial part because this is actually not a tutorial anymore. It's actually scenario 1, which leads you into everything else. But a pretty simple scenario. Everything is very graphically outlined, so you know what color enemies to put in and where to find everything. As this is the setup, there's always going to be a little bit of flavor text that gets you into why you're doing what you're doing. That's usually coming, it starts in here, it ends in here, and then you set this up. And this setup on this never takes more than, I would say, 5 to 10 minutes, and this is probably a 2-minute setup. You have an objective, what it is you're supposed to do, and this is the map of Clethandu as you travel through, trying to get to your dropship. And then here is your winning outcome, your losing outcome, and then the things that you're supposed to, paragraphs you're supposed to go to, the entries in that book when you're done. And that will lead you either to the next scenario, or maybe you jump around just a little bit. Going to the back of the book, you can see some of these are a little bit more elaborate. So here's all your flavor text in this one. Your setup in this one is quite big. And then your objective up top over here. And then down in here are all of your winning conditions. These are all different things that happen depending upon how you win. And then here is your losing condition. And you go through all the way through, and you can see, it's pretty well graphically laid out for you as you go through. And that is the scenario book. And then finally, this is the part that has gotten the biggest revision from the beginning, all the way down to the cover, quite frankly, and the back cover is a little different as well. But from the beginning to the end, every single page has, in fact, you can see, look, there's no table of contents. There were a few. This is an older version of this. I don't even use this in my playtests anymore. This would be version 1. but you can see all of this stuff has been rewritten. Sequence of play, books in the box, a little bit of history if you're not a Battletech person, as some of my friends really aren't, and then your personal story. So you've got the history of Battletech and the Succession War just a little bit in here, and then you've really got what you've been doing up until the point of the battle in here, and even this has been rewritten a little bit. So that has been my design endeavors for the last 3 to 4 years, working on Succession Wars, but this is what my passion has been for quite some time. And when I'm not gaming, I'm usually thinking about this and helping to redesign this stuff. So keep an eye out for it. Look for it in the wild at some point, and you might see it. Thanks for watching. If you made it all the way through to the end, thank you very much for watching, and look for the playthrough, which should be coming out in the not too distant future. Thank you.